Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. How you doing, Kyle?
Good, Joe. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Happy to have escaped the Arizona heat. It was pretty crazy for a little
smoke,
bit there.
though.
yeah. It's not too bad. Nowhere close to what it was before. Though, yeah, things are looking a little dicey here with fire stuff. People just can't stop lighting fires for whatever reason. So hopefully we get through wildfire season safely. We'll see.
Man,
I only had to really get out of here once in the years I've lived here for fire. But yeah, hopefully I can go a bunch more years without having to do it again.
scary stuff. And hoping everybody that might be listening in California stands safe.
Yeah, that's really terrifying. Sorry, everybody in Santa Cruz. That's terrifying. And folks had to evacuate San Francisco. That's really tough. I've heard a number of people did lose homes in Santa Cruz. It's really awful.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll be able to share about that eventually. I think there's some bigger psychedelic names that were impacted. Oh, some news we didn't even really get to talk about. Like James Orrock is missing. He was paragliding in Nevada and went MIA. And he's super accomplished. He's only had one injury ever paragliding.
Wow.
And he's not a young man and like internationally ranked in the sport. It's pretty wild. There's a big fundraiser going. You can find it on our Twitter page and Facebook group, and I think Facebook page too. So
yeah, I've already
check that out if you're interested.
Seen that they raised a lot of money for his search. So hoping that he's
like
okay.
They might have enough. Yeah, I really do too. And hopefully the New Zealand government gets involved and helps try to pressure or help fund some recovery efforts. Yeah, well, before we dig into some news, just want to let everybody know there are still spots left for navigating psychedelics for clinicians and therapists. The class starts September 17. I think there's still spots in both groups, but the early group is definitely closer to being sold out than the later group. I want to pull up a couple testimonials, Kyle. Like we keep getting some really great things that people are saying. And like I was just chatting with somebody last night, and it was amazing the kind of feedback we were getting. They're saying things like, I just can't believe 8 weeks is over. It was like nowhere close to enough time to get into this material. They really kind of want to take it again. And we've even had a guy taking it, I think for his third time.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. Here's one. This gentleman isn't a clinician, but he's involved in the field. Quote, enjoyed immensely the Navigating Psychedelics for Therapists course. As an older and grayer member of the community, I appreciate the history and variety of new and exquisite perspectives provided on such a profound topic, from research to theory to application. The implications have always been exhilarating and now finally undeniable. The course is an excellent value in expanding a personal knowledge to better decide how to investigate and incorporate the application of psychedelics from personal to the professional. So that was one of the more recent ones. And, you know, people are now getting extra value out of it by being able to get some continuing ed credits, you know, for in the state of California, if it's transferable to you in the US, psychologists, nurses, and therapists, I think can go through us. But, you know, check with your board to be sure they accept California credits.
Yep.
Before you jump in, specifically for the credits. It's a small extra fee for the CEs, but it's mainly just to cover us working through that third party to get you the credits. Yeah. It's an amazing course to teach. If you haven't even been to the website yet, just go check it out, psychedeliceducationcenter.com, and you can find the link right there. And if that doesn't speak to you, check out the free offerings. There's plenty of stuff there for you to check out.
Yep.
And if you want to help us out, leave us a review on Facebook, iTunes, your podcast app, tell a friend. If you want to help us out financially, you can leave a small monthly donation as small as $2 at patreon.com/psychedelics today. And you get a bunch of extras there that we don't really talk about in the show, but early access often. Sometimes we do some meetups, and there's some other stuff in there too. So I think that's it before we get started. Anything else, Kyle?
Yeah, I just want to also pitch, if you haven't checked out our Imagination as Revelation course. So finally getting all that content up. This is a class that I co-produced with Johanna Hille, and this is all about psychedelics and Carl Jung. So phenomenal material. Really, really loved what Johanna has put together here. So if you're interested in exploring Carl Jung and kind of like how psychedelics and Carl Jung kind of meet, and just learn more about Jungian psychology, check it out, psychedelicEducationCenter.com. And I think we'll hopefully be getting some, master classes with some other Jungians. And yeah, it's great. I've already got some great feedback from folks. So check that out.
I've only got the chance to watch 1 hour of the material, and it's really exciting.
Yeah.
I can't wait to dig through the rest of it. And it's our highest quality production yet. Nice audio, nice video. And yeah, I think you'll really dig it. And it's a glimpse into the future of what we're hoping to do. Yeah, cool. So let's dig in. Let's talk about MAPS. Yeah. Congratulations, MAPS. You raised a ton of money, and you're now able to complete all of the final research and essentially bring this stuff to market.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, finishing off the phase 3 trials, commercialization expenses, probably like packaging and, shipping, manufacturing, stuff like that. It's really exciting that this all happened. And Tim Ferriss kind of launched this campaign with Rick Doblin on a show. And what was it? There was like a $10 million match or something. So if they could raise 10 million in 90 days, they got matched 10 million. Then there was a bunch of other standalone donations.
Yeah, something
the guy
like
that
that
runs GoDaddy. There's a bunch of famous names that donated a bunch of money.
Yeah,
here.
Bob Parsons from GoDaddy, Alan Fournier from Pennant Investors contributed 1 million. Steve and Alexandria Cohen contributed another 5 million grant. And then Cody Swift and Miriam Volat from River Styx.
Saw that.
Yeah, which is awesome.
I'm excited that River Styx is getting a lot of press these days.
Yeah, and a few others. But I mean, really amazing. They raised over $30 million in less than 6 months. So nice job, MAPS. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I think it speaks well for the future. Like if they were able to do this with MDMA, with the awareness they've had on MDMA, which is not much from like the 80s till now, like that speaks volumes to what will happen when they put their attention towards ibogaine or whatever else it is, for bringing those things through the trials, which, is wildly expensive. And I would certainly rather have a nonprofit doing the research than big pharma types,
totally
closed data model, closed science. And MAPS is sharing their data quite regularly. So it's kind of where I want to see it be, but I know it's going to be complicated.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, yeah, congrats. I'm really happy that this happened. And yeah, I wish we could have played a part, but I don't know too many people with millions to give away.
One day, maybe.
Yeah, I hope so. Anything else on that MAPS article?
No, I mean, they just did the press release just stating that they've raised over 30 million to help with phase 3. So, hopefully they can push through and get MDMA approved for psychedelic assisted therapy.
Yeah, totally. And next up here on New Atlas, published yesterday, the 25th, landmark clinical trial exploring LSD-MDMA combo to begin late 2020. This is MindMed, put this press release out the other day. Call it candy flipping. This has been used for ages. Probably the ravers started it in the 90s or 80s. Probably, I don't really know. It's probably where I think the phrase came from, candy flipping. And, because they're always wearing like candy bracelets and necklaces and whatnot. Anyway, people think that it would decrease the stress of the LSD, like the acute stress felt in some LSD sessions would be lower.
Mm-hmm.
And there might be more joy and less fear. Perhaps that's due to like amygdala functioning, slowing down, maybe fear response slowing down. I know a lot of people naturalistically, we'll call it, that use MDMA before eating LSD so that they're much less fearful for the first hour of the trip, hour or two of the trip.
Mm-hmm.
So near zero anxiety. And what the article didn't mention, I think, was that the underground, there's a lot of underground therapists that have been using this combo for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And, I wouldn't be surprised if like as soon as MDMA came on the scene, like the Stark Club, all that stuff, Secret Chiefs, or I forget really who started the underground MDMA work, but I wouldn't be surprised if those people were using it in combination as well. It's not too much of a leap.
No, not at all. And, I know chatting with some of those folks within that community in the past, like talking about using that combo pretty often. So, and it's also a question that we get within our course, like combining substances like that. People have brought that question to our course, and, It's always hard to say, well, there's a lot of subjective reports, but actually like no research on it. I'm excited to see what comes out of it. And I'm glad that they're able to get approval for this, or it sounds like they've got approval for it. And it looks like they're going to be, their plan is to enroll 24 healthy subjects, and then 4 sessions will be 100 micrograms of LSD plus an MDMA placebo. The other one will be an LSD placebo plus a 100 milligram MDMA. The next one is 100 micrograms of LSD plus 100 milligrams of MDMA. And then the last one is an LSD and MDMA placebo.
Right. And I would expect with 24 individuals, you get some really interesting and useful data out of that.
Yeah.
Hopefully each of the individuals gets to those 4 sessions. For a pharma company, this is like not hard to do. Like, it's a nice proof of concept study. It's not super expensive for them, relative to like a phase 2 study. So I think that's pretty cool. And they're saying they'll begin it later this year, and we'll probably see the published results in early 2022. So, still a whole bunch of time until we see results. So, let's just, I'm excited for it. I'm always hesitant when pharma's involved, but I would just say, as long as they're not going to try to claim that they invented this process,
right?
I'm good with it. I'm good with that.
Come up with a new process to patent.
Right. And, it just needs to be 20-30% different, I think, for a new patent. So you just go like plus 30 micrograms, plus 30 milligrams of MDMA or something.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? Like, I'm sure there's more to it than that, but
right.
We'll see. Time will tell. And we've got some time left to speculate on this before it's out.
Yeah. Super exciting though.
Yeah, totally. I'm just happy to see that. And makes me think, like, what would happen if they did 2CB? Like, 2CB is kind of like both of them a little bit. And I know there's a lot of people, or at least some people in the underground, using it as an adjunct to psychotherapy, or in addition with psychotherapy. Yeah. And next up here, marijuana moment. You point this one out to me. Congressman raising money to legalize psychedelic mushroom therapy. So I think this is an extension of IP 34 that we had the Eckerts on discussing.
Mm-hmm.
And they're calling it Measure 109 now. So before it was like a ballot initiative, and now it's a measure that people are voting for. And it sounds like this Congressman, Representative Earl Blumenauer, is trying to raise funds and get some publicity behind it. He's now endorsing it. It doesn't look like a young man, but by wearing his bow tie, it makes me think he might be in the know in that photo there. So, yeah, it's interesting. So here's a quote from him. Measure 109 will offer hope in the form of a breakthrough treatment option in Oregon, psilocybin therapy. Research at America's top universities shows that psilocybin therapy can help those suffering from depression, anxiety, and addiction. Developed with therapeutic and mental health experts, Measure 109 brings this treatment to Oregon through a licensed, research-based system that supports and protects those in urgent need. Please join me by voting yes on this important common sense measure. That's at vote yes on 109.org. It's pretty interesting. I'm happy to see that some politicians are getting behind it publicly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in November. I mean, I think that's just even a huge push that they were able to get that on the ballot, right?
Totally.
Get that. I mean, that's huge for all of Oregon, right? I mean,
I think it would be amazing if they passed this and they passed the other one on decriminalizing all drugs.
Right.
In Oregon. Like, that would be like such a windfall to Oregon in general, like not having to spend that money on law enforcement anymore, could spend it on treatment, could like probably dump more research dollars into this program. It'd be amazing for the state. And as crazy and messed up as the US is, like, it's interesting to see like how different the laws can be in different places. They're kind of like competing for dollars over each other.
Yeah.
And Oregon's an amazing place. It's as far as I can tell, far less on fire than California is, but there's still a lot of fires, I bet. And it's really dry out there in the eastern part of the state. So
yeah, the high desert.
It's not all rainforest and jungle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So very interesting. Excited to see where it goes. I think I'm good on that one.
Yeah, me too.
All right. What's next here? The Usona thing?
Yes, Usona. So it sounds like they're getting back at it after the COVID pandemic halted their research. So they're exploring psilocybin, and yeah, it sounds like they're starting to get back at it again. So yeah, the institute, which is also supporting the research and use of psilocybin for anxiety, addiction, anorexia, cluster headaches, hopes to seek FDA or federal approval for treatment of depression by 2025. And they also were able to get breakthrough therapy status from the FDA as well.
Right. Yeah, it's awesome. So it's exciting to see that, and just really happy. It's a mix of nonprofits and for-profit organizations out there, and it can be a nice dialogue between all of them, hopefully, like as these things come to market and they're for sale. So like hopefully nonprofits act as like a price check, because Usona is really, it seems quite authentic in their mission to make this stuff very accessible. So quite excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Well, if that's it for news,
we do know
you
that
anything
there was that 60 Minutes with Anderson Cooper, but we didn't get to watch it, so nothing to report on our end for that. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, if there's anything of note, let us know. Psychedelics Today email at Gmail. We kind of assume it's more of the same, but just appreciate there being mainstream attention at times on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people already brought it up, which I thought was really interesting. I just met with somebody yesterday, a psychologist, and they're like, "Oh, did you see the 60 Minutes?" And just like really awesome to even just be getting that type of exposure on the topic. So,
yeah,
it's exciting that it's getting out there.
Totally. Yeah. So, yeah, and I think that will lead to more and more publications picking it up.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's all these local news stations that could do their own stories with local organizations doing research, or people opening up their own expanded access sites, stuff like that. So there's a lot of room for big media to be helping. So if you want to help, I'm sure you can make this a local interest story. So maybe check that out. Check with your editor, see where you can go. Yeah. So I wanted to chat about this idea of lineage in the psychedelic world, or maybe worldview might be a better phrasing for it. So, with our orientation, we have different orientations, right? But we both come from this Grof world of LSD psychotherapy, transpersonal psychology, and like
breathwork.
Perhaps the thing and breath work, and like perhaps what we agree upon is like there's tons of drugs out there and plants that can manipulate our consciousness to have these holotropic states of consciousness, but you don't necessarily need drugs or plants to do it, right? Like you can do this on your own as well. So you don't necessarily need a strong relationship with ayahuasca or mushrooms or LSD to have this. You could do it in just breath work and yoga, whatever, shamanism, drumming.
Dreaming.
Yeah. Like from the Jungian point of view, like all these other things might make it happen too fast. So, yeah. And what I'm seeing online often is it seems like a lot of people want to draw a line in the sand when it might not be the right line to draw in the sand. So it's like,
what do you mean by that?
So what are we going for as a community? Like, do you want to be right that only whole plant mushrooms or whole mushrooms are the right thing to do, and that we shouldn't be doing research on psilocybin or psilocin?
Mm-hmm.
Like we shouldn't be doing LSD research. We shouldn't be doing MDMA research. Like there seems to be kind of like single drug chauvinism of some kind happening. It's like, well, only my drug or plant is the right one. And it just seems really problematic to me, because what are we really going for? Like for me, I don't want to see people be prisoners or like victims of the drug war anymore. Like I would love to see more freedom for exploration and healing. And, like that's my goal. So I don't like when decrim nature is like kind of not wanting to include things like MDMA and LSD and like I understand the point. Like it's partialistic. Like we have to do one thing at a time. But Oregon like might prove that we can just do everything and reduce harm to our, like, for lack of a better word, brothers and sisters who aren't in the psychedelic movement,
Right.
who are also victims of the same war. And that perhaps this division is not in our best interest.
Yeah.
Perhaps united, we could all do better and get people the drug treatment services they need and more. Like, my girlfriend, for some reason, had the Republican National Convention on TV last night. And Ivanka Trump was talking and talked a lot about addiction and how big of a situation opioid addiction is, which is totally true. But like with her saying that, to me, what that means is that there's going to be an increase in funding to the DEA and the drug war,
Right.
not an increase in funding for treatment, because that, typically speaking, that party doesn't necessarily want to fund treatment. They want to fund prevention, which they see as the drug war.
Right.
They've not noticed yet that their drug war isn't effective. So, like, I'd like to congratulate drugs for winning the war on drugs. You know, like,
We've won.
can't fight it. Drugs won. And so, like, going back to my main point of like, how do we try to come together and unify a little bit as opposed to continue fracturing? Like, I understand, like, yes, psychedelics are amazing and they seem like a very different class of drugs. Should we treat them like legally as different? Like, I would say no. Like, let's just cut the shit with the drug war. It's racist. It's horrible. It's killing a lot of people still. There's tons of political prisoners still in jail for cannabis, which in many states is being sold and people are making a killing on. It's just insane to me that people are going to jail for, you know, not hurting anybody. Yeah, I don't know. Like Portugal having decriminalized everything and seeing super duper reductions in addiction rates. It's unbelievable. I think the UK government had an experiment where they gave heroin out for free to everybody for a long time. And they saw a huge drop in homelessness and crime. So they're going to continue the program. Like, these are things that can really immediately help people and help cities. And like, we're like, oh no, let's just make more kind of violence on drug users.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's what we're up against, guys. Like, ayahuasca shamans do go to jail.
Yeah.
Like, people from Peru have been locked up. Yeah. And
like that what was it? Military police guy over in Romania.
Yikes. It was like Romania, I think. Yeah.
Got locked up for serving ayahuasca. I mean, obviously different country, but yeah, it happens.
Right. And in the United States, being the leader in this drug war, like, is responsible for this global war on drugs, where in the Philippines, people are getting shot in the head for having smoked meth once. You know, like, you do this once. And Carl Hart had this in his slides. It's like, our policy is totally impacting how the rest of the world sees drug abusers. Like, if you use methamphetamine, like, I don't know, they had some sort of number, like a couple times your brain is beyond repair and you're like a violent, depraved criminal for the rest of your life. It's like, that's not true. It's not backed by science, but because some professor said it at some point, the whole world took it as truth.
Right.
And policy is now killing people and ruining lives worldwide because of our drug war. And, you know, the psychedelic world could do everybody a service by, you know, let's take a deep breath and figure out how we can do this together. And let's not fight. Like, let's play in the same sandbox and understand this decrim nature thing as a step in the right direction, but certainly leaves a lot of people vulnerable.
Well, and I think, like, I don't know, this has been a conversation that I think me and you have had. I've had it with other people. And when we say like the psychedelic community, like, what is that, right? Because there's so many different subsects and so many people with different agendas, right? I mean, you have the folks that, you know, might classify themselves as being part of the psychedelic community that go to festivals and raves and, you know, they're really submerged in that art scene. You have the psychedelic community of therapists and psychiatrists and people in the medical model wanting to do that thing. You have the decrim nature folks. You have, you know, the shamanic lineages. And, you know, you have all these different little like subcategories within, I guess, a larger, you know, generalization of an interest. And yeah, everybody's approaching it differently, right? And, you know, people want to see different things happen. And yeah, how can we come together? And yeah, I just always come back to that one episode we did about context of use, and just like how do we try to appreciate all different use cases and really respect where people are coming from, and that we don't need to fit it within these, this is the only way, this is the only model, and my way is better. And I guess obviously that happens since we are kind of dominated by medical and scientific paradigms. So the religious shamanic might be a little belittled and be like, oh well, that's just like religious woo woo, or like it's not valid. How do you validate spiritual the spirits and entities that come in? And well, it's so I mean I think this is something that Lenny has been trying to cram down our throats too, about like the medical model and Newtonian Cartesian paradigm, and that split and needing maybe a new way forward, and being able to really appreciate the variety of experiences out there.
Right. And yesterday, I want to have him on to like expand on this eventually, but talked about like like say this whole psychedelic landscape is one enormous amusement park on top of like the globe of consciousness, right? Like you can take the DMT ride and it's pretty cool, but it's only one part of the thing. Like you can take the ayahuasca ride, you can have spontaneous Kundalini experiences, you can, there's just so many compounds and substances that you can try, and they're individual rides that show you like an individual tour. But the thing is really vast.
Yeah.
And it's in us already. Like we are the holders of this stuff. It's not necessarily the plants, like though there seems to be some validity that there being some spirits in the plants of some kind, but what is that? Like we don't really know. Like it's a thing that appears benevolent sometimes, but can also appear horrifying at other times and quite malevolent. So, how do we go forward? And I think we need to really expand our framework. Like for me, that's why Grof is so amazing. It's like, this is all inborn. Lenny had a quote from LSD psychotherapy yesterday saying like, in the 5,000 sessions that Grof analyzed and I think had access to from his research projects, like he found nothing consistent across all 5,000 of these sessions. There was, and like the safest thing he could say is these are non-specific amplifiers of mental or psychic process. Like, and like what is the uniform? And this is LSD. This is a pure pharmaceutical drug at the time. Like what is that about? So, how do we go forward from here? Like, let's be really careful. Like, let's step slowly. Let's try to be kinder to each other. Like if you're on the internet and you like feel the impulse to be a troll of some kind, or like have a sharp tongue, maybe it's a little bit easier to convince somebody that there might be some value if you're kind. Like I see some language on our Facebook group sometimes. It's just not really great. I've had to ban some people recently for kind of being jerks to each other. And it's like, well, guys, we should be on the same team here. Like, are we? Or is there, a thing that we can't bridge here, a gap we can't bridge? So Kyle, you're looking up a passage right now in Way of the Psychonaut. Do you have a...
Well, I was just putting together some slides for Spiritual Emergency this morning and just trying to do some more research on it, and got some projects in the works for this topic, and just need to put together a little thing for the consultation group I've been doing. But kind of what you were saying just really reminded me of like what I was reading today about Grof. And, this was kind of, I mean, it's in the Spiritual Emergency chapter, but really talking about like, I guess I'll just read some stuff here. How could abnormal processes in the brain possibly generate such experiences as culturally specific sequences of psychospiritual death and rebirth, convincing identification with Jesus on the cross, or with dancing Shiva, an episode involving death on the barricades in Paris during the French Revolution, or complex scenes of alien abductions? Chemical changes can catalyze such experiences, but cannot, in and of themselves, create intricate imagery and the rich philosophical and spiritual insights that spiritual emergencies often provide. and they certainly cannot mediate access to accurate new information about various aspects of the universe. This becomes obvious when we look at the effects of psychoactive substance with known chemical structures and the doses in which they are used. The administration of LSD and other psychedelics and entheogens can account for the emergence of deep unconscious material into consciousness, but cannot explain its nature and contents. To understand the phenomenology of psychedelic experiences requires a much more sophisticated approach than a simple reference to abnormal biochemical and biological processes in the body. This requires a comprehensive approach that has to include transpersonal psychology, parapsychology, mythology, philosophy, and comparative religion. And then just ending, the same is true in regard to psychospiritual crises. So some of the stuff that you were saying just reminded me of this passage. And then he goes on. I thought this was really interesting. The experiences that manifest in spiritual emergencies are clearly not artificial products of pathophysiological processes in the brain, but belong to the psyche.
Right. Yeah, if we want to pathologize these things, like it's hard to do. Like, okay, like 20 people had this particular kind of quote unquote enlightenment experience. How is that like something that you can reduce to like an organic illness or chemical imbalance, even though that kind of term's going away? Like, I don't think you can. Like, it just seems to be like there's a set of experiences out there that just by the virtue of the fact of being human, we have access to. We have to like work at it in different ways sometimes. Sometimes you got to really suffer to get it, but you can get it.
Yeah.
I don't want to I feel like Jimmy Cliff, like you can get it if you really want, but like the amount of torture you might have to go through is unbelievable. Like I'm getting pretty deep into Chris Bache's LSD in the Mind of the Universe, Diamonds from Heaven. And it is brutal, like what he went through at times. Like it's a good indication of how severely traumatic a high dose LSD session can be. He thankfully had a good container and good preparation, so he landed fine. But 5 hits of acid, like 500 micrograms, like that can really do some serious shit to somebody. As you well know, and many others well know, like sometimes you have to get therapy for a number of years to like sort that shit out.
Yeah.
And we're getting better at like helping people land, but psychiatry generally isn't there yet. We're like, all right, slap these drugs in, and you should be fine.
Yeah. And, I was just kind of thinking about that passage, just like how complex the landscape is and how we really have to bring in, a lot of different ways of knowing and a lot of different like cosmologies and beliefs to even try to understand some of this stuff. I mean, yeah, just even, you saying examining over 5,000 cases and it being so radically different, how do you contextualize that and try to make sense of these experiences? I mean, they are so unique, I think, to the psyche and the universe in some sense, right? Like,
yeah, totally. So like another thing, I love these stories from Grof where he's like, this shouldn't have happened. There's the one story of the woman. I feel like she was connecting with some sort of like ancient Jewish lineage. Like this is an ancient language that's kind of like gone from the planet, maybe ancient Sephardic or something like that. And she's like, I have suffered, you have suffered, and like we have suffered, like something like that. If I remember correctly, she got super naked in the session too, and she had no exposure to this language, but she was chanting this like dead language really well for a long period of time. I think they recorded it, or somehow they had access to a scholar that knew the language.
Yep.
And they got it all verified that it was like an authentic thing. So, there's a lot of these stories of things that are impossible coming up. Impossible from our current paradigm, mechanistic, Newtonian, Cartesian paradigm. It shouldn't be able to happen, but it does. And so what does that mean? Like there's a layer, if we want to say like just everything's available all the time. Like that's how Lenny phrased it, like Whitehead. Like we don't have to get, fancy with like diagrams and layers. It's just like, the present moment contains the whole past. And it's always available to us if we tune in properly. Yeah. So it's trippy. It's really trippy. And it gets, this is why we're so excited about Whitehead, I think. Because like seems to be a framework that can explain a lot of these things.
Hmm.
And he does a really good job laying out how this relates to modern science. And, there's even people doing contemporary work on Whitehead, like including current science into that.
Yeah.
It's really helpful. Yeah. So, like I think this concept of lineage is really cool because, we're in a really specific lineage. Like I have no problem with other people being in their own lineage. It's just when people get a little militant about their own lineage
Mm.
is when there might be a problem. Like, say you got hooked up with somebody like Jim Jones and like you're doing all sorts of like LSD stuff and like looking a little risky and culty, and then all of a sudden violence happens. Like that could be one bad lineage. Same thing with Charles Manson. There's other organizations out there like the folks behind Octavio Rettig and Jerry Sandoval. Like that's really problematic to me because they like really believe in this person despite body counts and bad actions and all this other stuff.
Right.
But on the other hand, like being mentored by a traditional Amazonian shaman for, 20 years, like what that's such an amazing education.
Yeah.
And
PhD
it's
in nature.
far outside the scope. Yeah. Like it's way outside what I can understand,
Hmm.
even though I've been doing, 20 years in a different direction. And, your kind of hybrid is kind of cool because you've got this kind of Westerny transpersonal psych and somatic psych background, but you've also got kind of a background in North American, Native American practices. And I think that's a really cool balance, right? Like you're able to see things from a few different angles.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then you've got the Mazatec shamans who've got like multiple plants, like tobacco, salvia, and mushrooms.
Yeah.
Like that, what an amazing three-way combo. And I don't know, like, I don't know that we've ever really talked about tobacco much, but it's one of the most powerful plants in like the North American, Central, South American traditions. Like it's,
Yeah. Very sacred.
like it's used kind of like a sage in some context, like a cleaning.
Yeah. Clearing, offerings. Like when I was learning local plant medicines with Abenaki elder, she said, when you pick a plant, be sure to leave an offering. Traditionally, that offering is tobacco or cornmeal. And, she had me stitch together and create my own kind of like tobacco pouch just to bring around. And that was specifically the sacred pouch to leave offerings to the plants. And there's certain ways to pick plants. You don't want to pick the oldest one. You don't want to pick the youngest one. And there's all this kind of, I guess theory behind that. And yeah, tobacco is very sacred in those traditions. I mean, especially, in ayahuasca shamanism, right? I mean, the mapacho just kind of always using it to clear energy out and protect the space. Also being able to send prayers and like, intentions through the smoke, right? I had one teacher that said, the smoke carries your prayers to the upper world, to the heavens, to the creator. So, you're using it really intentionally like that.
So like you're breathing in, like doing the prayer and then breathing it out and it goes out.
Yeah.
And there's probably a ton of different ways it's used too, right? Like
Probably, yeah. I mean, I'm sure it varies, from tradition to tradition.
Right. So like and what might be holy for one tradition might be sacrilegious for another tradition, right? So like there's this really weird, broad spectrum of human behavior. And there is commonality, but there's a lot of difference too.
Mm-hmm.
But like just the way we're demonizing tobacco these days feels awkward to me. It's almost like there's some sort of cabal against keeping the earth sacred or something. That's like an idea that comes up for me once in a while. It's like, oh, no, we don't want to bless the earth. We want to damn the earth. Like, let's keep drilling oil. Let's like get into some more wildlife refuges and drill more oil. And, like let's do things that are bad for the planet instead of things that are good for our planet and our relationship to it. So it's like really, really weird. I was listening to this Navajo Diné woman 2 days ago, maybe, on this Sounds True Trauma Summit they're doing.
Oh, yeah. I've come across that.
Yeah. It's really good. Like some of them are really good. Some are a little boring, but that's what you get in a summit with a ton of people. But this woman saying you can have it any way you want it. Like, you you can have all the weapons, or you can have all the peace. You can have all the money, or you can have all the, relaxation you want. And it was really interesting because she's talking about living. I think she's from New Mexico and lives kind of near Los Alamos Research Lab, where they developed a lot of nuclear weapons. There's tons of nuclear waste there still. There was forest fires rolling in towards it, and she had to leave for like a while because she was nervous about that happening, and what would happen, and like, how disrespectful and like short term that is relative to like, let's have an amazing relationship to the planet, like the planet being our skin, like the planet is just another extension of our body.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that stuff hasn't been cleaned up yet. Like I was just driving back from Arizona, drove through Hopi and Navajo nations, and there's like still a lot of radioactive waste out there that's not being cleaned up.
It's crazy.
And like,
so sad.
What is that an indication of? It's our lack of respect for Native American people. It's a lack of caring if our past actions get people really sick, and broad-based denial that it's even happening. I think, like like you don't have to be a Republican to be into war and like be into weapons development and making money from war. Like we'll make it that simple. So it's kind of like a bipartisan thing. Like, let's make money off weapons.
Yeah.
And let's externalize the costs so that people make money. Like, no one makes money if you have to clean up, 5 states worth of nuclear pollution. If we had another Chernobyl, like that would be really bad. Yeah. So where do we go with that? It's like, are we respecting ourselves if we disrespect the planet? Maybe not.
And I mean, I guess this kind of makes me think about just your original question about worldview and lineage. And it just has me thinking about, I don't know who I was having this conversation with, but I was just maybe sharing some ideas or opinions about some new players that just enter on. And, you just kind of talking about like business just kind of had me thinking about this. It's like, you have people that are deeply rooted in some sort of lineage tradition that have been around for a while, and they feel really rooted there and they have a lot to offer and share. And the way it feels like, some capitalistic or Western models work, it's like, oh, I don't need a lineage. I can just come in and play and just kind of like profit off of whatever. And I mean, it's interesting to see people that don't have any sort of lineage or grounding in some sort of practice or theory or teacher, and just able to join. And I think that's really threatening to a lot of folks that have been around for a while, and have a lot to offer. And then you see newcomers that, just totally switch career lines because they saw an opportunity. And, what's that about, right? And how is that threatening to people that are actually trying to do the good work and keep some of that wisdom alive?
Right. And by abstracting themselves higher into like the higher realms of capital, they're able to defend themselves pretty skillfully from the drug war. By playing the rules of the drug war, like by having enough money, they're doing it. But like a lot of these people are putting their lives on the line still. They have been for decades, providing these underground services. And yeah, like I see there being a really weird dichotomy there. Like, how do we balance that? And how do we make it fair? Like, the only way I see to make it fair is by ending the drug war.
Yeah.
Like, LSD is not going to go away. MDMA is not going away. None of this stuff's really going away, except for the things that might go extinct.
Right.
Over harvesting, like peyote and bufo various. So, please stay away from those unless you're deeply involved in some sort of tradition. I just say stay away from the toads altogether, but I know people won't do that. So, yeah. And yeah, this dichotomy is something to keep in mind. Like, it's not just the underground people. It's the shamans. It's the Mazatec. It's the Shipibo and various people of the Amazon River Basin. And, how do we... I really wish I had a good answer here. But maybe it's as simple as saying thank you, ancestors.
Yeah.
Thank you, forerunners, for doing what you did before. And I'm going to try to respect you in going forward. Instead of like, I'm going to make profit and it's okay if people go to jail. while I'm making a profit. It's like, yeah, it doesn't seem fair and equitable. It seems kind of, greedy and not okay by this community's ethic. Like this community has a big history. And by just saying, oh, this is another pharma, like you're not really doing it a service.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would love to have these conversations with some CEOs. So JR, if you're out there, I'd love to chat. Just love to have a conversation. Kevin O'Leary, if you want to talk, happy to talk. Ronan, I probably owe you a call. So I'll try to get in touch soon. We can chat. And, it would be interesting to hear Peter Thiel's opinion, like from his mouth. Like he's a big Trump supporter. So maybe he's like super into the drug war still. I don't know. He's got so many billions that might not matter to him. Really, what even happens? It's just another good investment from his perspective.
Right.
And us, like you and I and our followers and the people that have been around for a long time are of no consequence. But that's kind of the way the system's been set up, right? Like there's been enough scientific papers where they're like, this is a really safe bet. Let's just charge forward here.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't we? When we've got, hundreds of scientific papers that we don't have to pay for. And there's nothing getting in the way. And I'm seeing a lot, like I'm on LinkedIn a lot lately, and I'm seeing a lot of weird cheerleading. Like it's
How so?
really great that like pharma cheerleading, like, oh, cool. Like new developments in pharma, like, let's go. And, LinkedIn is definitely more of like a capitalist platform because people looking for jobs. So they don't want to put like things out there that are too left, that are too like justice oriented. So like maybe that's why, like, oh, I would love to have a job at Field Trip. It's like, well, you sure? Like you're probably gonna get great dental, but like what, is there something more interesting going on that could help more people for less money?
Right.
And there's a lot of things to balance here. Like I don't really have a great answer. I really wish I did, but it's maybe just being aware of what you're doing.
Yeah, I think so.
And what the implications are.
Yeah. Being aware and respecting where a lot of this knowledge and wisdom comes from and not trying to trample on it or devalue it. I'm just
How do they give back?
How do you give back? Bit? Yeah. Like, I don't know. I'm just thinking of something. I don't know if it was Symposia or somebody kind of showed that tweet that JR posted. It's like, oh, I don't really want to associate with I forget what he used, decrim or just the people that use some of these drugs. Like I'm more interested.
It was a little bit derogatory the way I interpreted it.
Yeah. And it's like, well, there's a lot of information that comes out of that field, right? And so what are you doing by separating yourself from people that are already using this by creating, I guess, in a more kind of elite fashion of like, I can just create drugs and make it look more professional than there's people using this in other contexts that they're getting benefit and healing out of. Like, why try to separate that and push it away and also not respect like, all right, well, where'd your candy flipping idea come from? Definitely probably came from the underground somewhere, right? People talking about it, people reporting it, and then being able to say like, I don't want to associate with that. It's like, like we have to give respect where respect is due.
Yeah, we should. Like we're a pretty connected species on a pretty connected planet. And if we're like not acknowledging that, there might be some problems and consequences downstream. So I would just like encourage, like, I'm sure there's a few people listening that work for those companies. Like, just think about it and think about how we might be able to help each other, help the movement as a whole. Yeah. And move things forward in like a respectful, professional way. And like that, Lamisha Hill interview that just came out on Tuesday is really, really killer. And it talked about this a lot. Like, how do we just give thanks to everybody that came before us?
Yeah.
On a regular basis. And I think there's something there because it's a really quick action that, touches on the whole past. Not everything in the past is glorious. And there's a lot of really rough stuff. And there's a lot of amazing hard work that happened before 2012 even. Like so much great research and
what's that? Yeah. What's that quote? We ride on the shoulder of giants.
Right. Yeah, I only see so far because I stood on the shoulder of giants. I think that was Newton.
Mm.
It's a big deal. And we might be able to go much further if we look at what's happening. That's why I'm so excited about things like 2CB, Salvia. Like there's stuff that hasn't even touched the market. Like people haven't even really talked about doing serious research with it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been used for quite some time, both of them. And there's probably plenty of others that aren't even in the pharmacopoeia yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I guess to say on the flip side, like what some of the other big companies are doing, there is some benefit to that too. So not wanting to totally shit on everybody that's doing that work, because you are,
No, I want them to be here.
Yeah, being able to get the research out there, you're able to kind of get the PR out there to be able to fund the work within the system so it gets that validation, able to bring drugs to market, maybe make this feel a little bit more accessible to folks down the line, even though it might not look like that off the bat. That's, I hope, long term of what happens when you have companies and people that are, understand that market a little bit more, and they're able to play that ball game. And they're like, all right, we're going to take this risk. So, I think we also have to take that into consideration from the perspective of people that are sitting in some sort of lineage and are afraid of what some of, these bigger players are doing. It's like, well, who knows what that looks like down the line, right? Maybe they're being able to do this to be able to make this stuff more accessible, hopefully. And, we could read at the little things of like, oh, they want to like hold on to this patent and this and that. And that's the stuff we got to be like, all right, well, where's your lineage and how are you going to give back to the community? Or are you just going to hold on to it?
Right.
And that's, I think, if you are running one of those big companies, like think about it, right?
Right. Like maybe you do 1% to Drug Policy Alliance, 1% of profits to Drug Policy Alliance. That would satisfy my issues. But, like look at how long it took MAPS to bring MDMA as far as it's been.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Ages, like 20 years plus, maybe.
Well, since the 80s.
Right. So like it's going to, when all these big dollars with profit motivation come in, like this stuff can now happen in like 6 years or less, probably. And, as technology gets better and, computers faster, we're going to be able to do all of this stuff so much quicker than we have been able to date. So, like, and there's always going to be profit motives. Like there's always going to be patents, like, unfortunately, but it's also just how these people with money protect their investments. Like there's not going to be money invested if they can't protect their investment with dollars. Yeah. And we're not going to have this science ever if this money doesn't come in. Like we might have it in 400 years, but we can have it like a lot sooner if the investors come in. And let's take a long-term view. What does 30 years out look like? Pretty freaking good if we survive climate change stuff from a psychedelic psychiatry kind of point of view. Yeah. A lot of these things being off patent, like plenty more experience, a lot more trained people. Perhaps trauma just is a thing of the past, or we're able to resolve it a lot quicker than we had ever been able to before at very large scales. I hope.
That's the goal, maybe, and also be a little bit more creative in switching paradigms and making new things. And I don't know, maybe spending more time with philosophy and figure out what the hell we're doing here,
Yeah. Maybe the robots allow us to do philosophy more regularly than we ever thought.
Yeah. I remember stumbling across a project called the Venus Project, I think, years and years ago. I never really got too into it, but I spent a little time researching it. But, that was like their theory. Like, how do we use AI and robots to have more leisure time to create art and do the things that like we want to be able to do from like that human perspective.
Right. Yeah.
And that's really interesting, right? Like AI and all this stuff seems scary, right? It's like, well, where are our jobs going to go? But I don't know also what happens if that's widely acceptable and it gives a lot of us time to be more creative. I'm just even thinking about like what type of creative projects or things people have been doing during this time of COVID, having downtime. I know it's been really hard for a lot of folks. But I also wonder, I've heard of people being like, wow, I got to spend time like reading this or being, starting a creative project. And wow, like, what can I do with all this time?
It's a really interesting reflection point for culture. Like, do I really want to go back and do that job that I didn't like and brought me no happiness whatsoever? Or do I want to try this other way of being? Do I want to like try intergenerational living for a while, see how I can do it skillfully and well, like has been done for many thousands of years before us. Like this nuclear family concept is very new and perhaps is to our detriment. Like how many individual mansions does everybody need? Like what if we had one and we could fit 4 families in it, like extended families? So you're not alienated. You've got connection constantly. You've got community, like this Navajo Dine that I was talking about before was like, perhaps this is a message from Earth saying, hey, you've come this far doing this way of living. And it got you here, which is cool. But you've now got all of these other problems coming up. Like, are your children going to be able to go in the ocean? Like, is it going to be safe to live on the planet 40 years from now? Like, the projection that keeps coming back to me is in about 40 years, 1/7 of the world's population will be dehomed from climate change. And,
wow,
like that's, by today's numbers, it's 1 billion people. And, what percent of those will be really angry at the West and want to do some bad stuff? Who knows? Like, potentially a lot. That's not very good for the project of civilization that we're running now. Like, and how would we shift? And that these are the things that psychedelics may be able to help us answer. Just business as usual isn't going to work. And like, it's going to lead to a lot of deaths and a lot of people losing their homes. And it's really tragic. I'm kind of optimistic about this Green New Deal situation, though I think there's going to be a lot of screwing around. I do think like overall it's for the best. And I hope the rest of the world also does something similar. Then we don't need to worry about freaking climate change anymore. Then we can worry about art more specifically or something. Yeah. Or, like reading Chris Beisch and a few other mystical books. It's like, is this really the project individuals need to be undertaking? Like, or is it like, what about just personal initiation and exploration? Like, is it necessarily your responsibility to help on that project, or is it more your responsibility for self-development? And I think that's a really tricky question, and perhaps an even unfair one. Like, but perhaps by seeking professional or personal development, you're then able to help the world that much more.
Yeah, I always come back to like, whenever I think about the archetype of America and the West, I usually think of the hero. And, can we stop playing the hero role? And could we kind of start to look back at like other archetypes and really appreciate other archetypes? Like, why does everybody have to go out and slay the dragon, right? Can we really appreciate maybe doing your own work, maybe taking on the healer role and doing other things? Because I think that drives a lot of like, I don't know. Yeah, everybody wants to save something in the world, right? But can we save ourselves and can we do our own work? And what does it feel like to slow down? I always think about that. It's like, okay, we came up with a new piece of technology to save this, but by harvesting, precious minerals and creating a plant that's then, polluting the river, now you need to create new technology to maybe clean up that mess. And then, I don't know, sometimes I see it as a cycle. And I think we're at the point where we need technology. I think we've got ourselves in the mess where we need certain technologies to help us get out of it. But at what point is it that we're just continuing to kind of throw gasoline on a fire by thinking that we need to do something?
Right. Yeah. Like probably the best analogy, the easiest analogy is like introducing new species to predate on like species that are out of control in certain geographies. They did really good demonstrations of this in The Simpsons, but it's happening. I'm a little nervous about what's happening in Florida. Like the genetically engineered mosquitoes are going to get released to help combat Zika, and I'm a little freaked out about it. Though I know some people that were in discussion with FDA and a few other organizations around this. Like it's still, I'm not necessarily comfortable with it. And it could be that we're creating new monsters by solving old monsters. And, I think you were hinting at like Tesla, for instance, electric cars with like this new thing that might solve our old problem. But, like batteries are dirty. Batteries are powered by slave labor often, and like rare earth minerals in Africa. And, it's a really tough scene. And burning less gasoline is important. Burning less fossil fuels in general is important. And electric cars do help with that. But it's like, should we be buying a new electric car every 3 years? Should we just buy one and have it for the rest of your life?
Batteries burn out. Yeah.
That might be more ethical and environmentally friendly. Like, what if you're able to just buy one thing and not buy like 10 cars, over the course of your life? So you've decreased your usage by 90%. Like, that's pretty good. And like very minimal fossil fuels coming out, hopefully. So, like there's so many different angles here. And, the cell phone thing.
It's paradoxical, right?
It's really tough.
It's like just an endless paradox of like, oh, we need this, but look at what harm it causes. Oh, but this technology, it's just like this endless loop of like, I don't know.
I think you can do accounting for it. Like, there's less fossil fuel, there's less carbon impact on the environment through production and creation of electric cars. And like the production of petroleum, shipping it all over the world, oil spills, all that. Like, that's a big deal still. Like, we're still having ocean spills from oil drilling, and we're about to go into the Arctic and screw up a whole nother wildlife refuge. And it's not pretty. And like, we're already on the brink of environmental collapse, and we're bringing more oil in. So like, I think anything that's not putting more petroleum in the air or carbon in the air is good. Like, what can we do? Yeah. Even if we might lose some things? Like, this is a really urgent scenario. Like, COVID kind of overshadowed climate change for the last like 6 months at least. And it's kind of freaks me this shit out. It's like, we're spending all this money to fight protests and fight COVID, but like, has there been an increase in spending on saving the environment so that people can proceed to have children safely and comfortably? And, like, I'm probably not having kids partly because of this whole climate situation.
I was going to say, like, what would be part of that solution to try to save the climate?
Like, we need people to slow down.
Is that traveling less? Like, kind of not really depending on globalization all the time, even though some parts of globalization are really great.
Yeah. Relocalization, degrowth, slowing down. If you're going to travel a ton, like, figure out how you can pay in to like buy those carbon credits back or something so that more windmills go in. It's just less coal plants. Like, easy math, windmills over coal plants, solar over coal. Like, the amount of electricity generated by solar now is unbelievable and super cheap relative to 10 years ago. Yeah. Like, solar in a lot of countries is putting coal out of business. So it's just a matter of technology continuing to evolve there in the solar and wind space. Like, perhaps a smart grid so we have less waste in distribution. And I like this idea of small, like microgrid. Like, what happens if every town had a really small, solar or wind thing? Right. So that, you don't need the massive coal plant 5 towns over. And so there's less loss through distribution. Like, there's a lot of loss when it travels through lines. And, people are working on this, right? And at Claremont years ago, there was somebody talking. This is a conference where Grof was. There's like a special track there at Claremont about climate engineering. And I met some of the people talking about like spraying chemicals into the atmosphere, kind of like the paranoid chemtrail thing. But it was like, this is a last ditch effort to like deflect sun from killing the planet. Like, how do we cloud up the skies so there's no blue skies for 20, 30 years and that we don't all die, right? Like, horrifying. There's going to be a lot of consequences from that, like vitamin D deficiency and much more, I'm sure. But it's a really freaky scene. And like, do we really want to go there? Like, shouldn't we do everything we can to not go there? Right. Worshipping the Dow Jones and all these, stock ticker things and profit overall. Like, it's as good as suicide.
Yeah. And I guess it makes me come back to like, just thinking about like experiences and holotropic states and being, what is it like to just be? And I think parts of COVID and lockdown and stuff like that, like, I've just been really reflecting on that. Like, what do I actually need in life? And, what satisfies me? Sometimes it's the little things. And, it's been really interesting. I was thinking, for the past few years, I've been traveling so much, going to like my colloquium for grad school, going to conferences, going to events and, doing all this stuff. And then, this is like the first time, like, I haven't gotten on a plane in like months. And it's like, whoa, do I always need to be doing that? right? Like there's an impulse in me that wants to explore something new because I get sick of being around, my environment and I need to constantly switch it up. But it's also like, well, why do you have that impulse, right? And can you sit with that? And I mean, it's just been really interesting to have to sit with all this discomfort and being like, what actually like brings me happiness? I don't know, having a garden has been bringing me some happiness, and just doing small things like, I think I mentioned maybe on the last episode, like just been going down to the local farm market, need some stuff, just walk down there, go in my garden, pick some stuff out. I get to do all this stuff online, and there's really not much to do, when you really think about it. I mean, obviously there's stuff to do, but there's a lot of work to do. But just this idea of being, right? I think a lot of people are motivated by like lots of, materialism. Like I need new things constantly. Like I really think about it. Like I really don't buy that much shit. Like I buy food, and I like to spend my money on stuff like that. But like when I think about like, I don't know, clothing and this and that, like I really try to hold on to stuff. Like, do I need this all the time? I think the most thing I buy is books. Like probably the one thing I spend, food and books, I spend the most money on. But it's like, do I need all these new fancy things all the time? Can I ride it out? Right. Until it starts to finally wear down and be like, okay, I need to buy something new now.
It's been one of my tricks is delaying.
And, I guess that's hard because we're very...
How long can I delay this for?
We're very status oriented in Western culture, right? And it's like, if we don't keep up, if we don't have the newest things, it's like, then we don't fit into culture. Or, we might feel outside of it at times. And it's like, well, do we always need to do that? Can we pull back a little bit and be like, what do I actually need? And, what is it like to just be sometimes? And I think sometimes we get too caught up on trying to be or trying to become something. And where we actually never sit and actually we just be. We're just too caught up in the becoming. Oh, I need to do this. I need to become this. And, I want to try so hard to just be, but you actually never actually get to do that when you're so caught up in the cycle.
Grof talks about that a little bit of like the kind of typical Western tragedy. Like I'll be happy once I get my MBA. Like I'll be happy once I become a judge or a dentist or whatever. And it's kind of like... you get there and you're just so disappointed and you're like, what's next? Like I just did all that for this, like it's tough. Like, and I think that's probably happening in the university system now. People spent so much money for their PhD and time. And now like, it seems like the university structure is going to collapse a bunch, which is going to be really problematic. Yeah. Like how do we set our goals coming back from psychedelic sessions? Like, are you just getting really expansive and manic and you want that same yacht Usher has? Or do you want like, a garden and a small home, and, some sort of a community around you? Like both have a certain kind of appeal, but what's more sustainable? Like what helps you connect with your family more and the planet more? It's probably the garden, like, and psychedelics will definitely put people through some various ringers, right? Like there's the neo-Nazis on psychedelics. There's like Viking people on psychedelics, CEOs, salespeople. There's a lot of really wild diversity in the psychedelic world.
Yeah, right. You have the people that like want to innovate tech and that's the future. I mean, I've definitely had these experiences in these sessions where it's like, okay, the future of human civilization is going towards integration of technology and AI. And then I've had like other sessions where it's like, shit, we're so uprooted from like who we are as a species and so disconnected from our roots and our lineage that we've kind of wandered so far away and we're suffering from some sort of amnesia of trying to remember who we are. And, are we stewards of the earth? Are we stewards of spaceship Earth? If this is the only thing that we have for thousands of years, well, do we take care of it? But then on the flip side, it's like, well, shit. Like maybe we do fuse with like technology and AI and evolve the species that way. So it's like all these weird philosophical things that I go through and that I've definitely have cycled through in some of these sessions. having visions of like, advanced machinery and technology, and you go, what the fuck is that? Like, is that like a prediction of the future? Is that where we're going? And then you have like another vision. It's like, wow, we've just destroyed the planet and we really need to just come back and take care of it and take care of our like local environments and whatnot. And it's like this weird kind of bipolar thing of like going back and forth between like these different paradoxes, these different realities.
I'm going to try to make this quick so we can wrap, but Terrence McKenna had this dream that he chatted about once in a while. It's like kind of his techno dream. And he's like, think a couple hundred years in the future, you're able to just walk around the planet naked. Like it's a big wild reserve and you're like able to just soak in the nature, and you can at any point just connect to like the global internet, no device required. Yep. It's an implant of some kind. And then you're just able to connect to the rest of it. And you don't need anything. Like you're totally comfortable, you're taken care of, you're safe. And you don't need a car, you don't need a plane. And you're able to just, full on virtual reality it, and you're with your people. And further, Friday, like the day this episode comes out, I don't know when it is, but Elon Musk is demonstrating the first Neuralink thing, which is terrifying and super interesting. It's like this really weird implant that I think goes into brains, and people can quite easily just interact with digital stuff.
Fascinating.
It's like really interesting, really scary.
Scary, yeah.
I remember him talking about it at one point. He's like, it's going to be expensive for sure, but the financial benefit people will get from having it is just extraordinary. Like you'll be able to, produce so much more intellectual material, whatever inventions. I can only imagine the stock traders, and it'll be pretty freaking weird. But, for me, I'm having a lot of physical issues, like typing, mousing, all that kind of stuff hurts a lot. So like there's something attractive about not having to use those kinds of devices.
Totally. I would love to not sit in front of a computer. I wish I could just like channel all my thoughts into something, just like think about it. And I don't know if it's typed up or whatever, it records.
It would be nice.
Pretty sweet.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, food for thought. I think that's enough for now. Wildly rambling show, but I hope it brought you some value. We talked about some really important stuff, and simmer on it. Next time you're on a gram or two of mushrooms, simmer on some of these topics.
So I guess some takeaways, think about your lineage, and then I think the one thing that we really continue to touch on is the drug war, how destructive it is, and just how terrible it is for a lot of marginalized communities and people. And, should we be moving towards a more decriminalized path to be able to, not arrest people and jail people and use extreme forces for, cognitive liberty. And, I think that's important. And also some of these more philosophical questions.
Totally. All right, Kyle, I think that's good for now. So people check out psychedelicEducationCenter.com, learn about navigating psychedelics for clinicians and therapists. It starts on September 17. If you want to help us out, you can leave a small monthly donation at patreon.com/psychedelics today. And if you don't have the money and you want to just help us out anyway, tell a friend or leave us a review on Facebook, iTunes, or your podcasting app.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Yeah. Till next week.
All right, Kyle. It was fun. Yeah. Thanks, y'all, for tuning in. We'll see y'all later. Joe and Kyle signing off. Bye-bye.